In this part, I want to approach it from yet a different vantage point because I think that it might be potentially useful. This is how my system seems to learn when I look at it from different vantage points, different analogies. And it's beautiful because we're looking at one thing, but it can be looked at from different sides and it appears different, right? So we can talk about it from the side of resistance, from love, from this path, from that analogy, whatever. We're talking about the same thing. And I want to make a bold statement that this is what all the wisdom traditions are talking about, just in their own words, right? In their own terminology, in their own paths. And essentially, what I'm feeling now is that the path, I'm trying to simplify as much as possible because of course, it's sort of like we have AI now, and you know how you can ask your favorite AI agent to expand from bullet points. You give it three bullet points, you can ask it to expand it into a full email, if not an essay, if not even heck, you can ask it to write a book, right? And so we can expand on this and I can create more content and I could be writing books and I could be talking about it for hours, keeping satsang. And that's cool. That's awesome. But that's not what's unfolding now. There's like a sense of beauty being in that simplicity. And I say that fully aware of the irony that this is part five of this series. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt. But hear me out. What if we saw this present moment already as perfect? And so notice as we entertain that thought, how there are voices inside of us that come up and beg to differ. It would be better if I wasn't experiencing the contraction in my belly. It would be better if I wasn't hungry. It would be better if I wasn't in the middle of a legal battle or in a conflict or whatever. And now, right, so we're moving, and now, so like that appeared here, we were here. Let's include that. So again, we say this moment is perfect because, not despite, because all of that is here. Maybe there's some fear. Can we allow the fear to just be here? And not, let's touch on the just and justly here. What I mean by that is that we're definitely not pushing at it, right? We're not tolerating it. We're not saying, okay, I don't like you, but for the duration of this meditation stay. Nor are we rescuing it, nor are we trying to abide to some sort of a spiritual ideal where we feel like, oh, well, there's a wounded part of us here. We should tend to it. No, we're just we're not giving reality. We're not reifying the illusory belief that there is something to fix. You see, that's the root of all the false beliefs, that there is somewhere else but here. There's somewhere else we could get to, that we can heal, that we can fix. So what if instead it's like, the obstacle becomes the way? What if the painful sensation that we're with becomes the portal into peace? And so just pick whatever is arising. Maybe there's a contraction, there's fear, there's a desire, there's a clinging, there's aversion, whatever, and just invite that to stay, to be fully felt without fixing. And notice how that fixing is that subtle mechanism that's been running all our lives of running different strategies, all of which aim at only one thing and one thing only, which is to avoid pain. So what if we just stop that entire mechanism and instead we just allow the pain to be fully felt? And that's going to be scary, and that there's going to be resistance, and that is included. What if we feel the fear? What if we feel the doubt? And if you stay here, I invite you to pause the video or come back to meditation afterwards. But something begins to open. Something begins to open to an even greater degree of absolute freedom, because all of the other versions of freedom that I've personally touched on in my spiritual journeys had always this one critical flaw, like an Achilles heel or like a kryptonite to my spiritual endeavors and achievements. And simply put, it was the fact that it was an experience. And as all experiences, they come and they go. So no matter how high I seem to get, kind of, spiritually speaking, on a spiritual high of noticing, wow, this is all, love, this is whatever. We've all had an experience of that. I won't get into the details. But it was the critical flaw was always there that gosh, this might go away. Or even if that fear wasn't there momentarily for, a second, a minute, a day, then sooner or later it kind of crumbled, right? Because sooner or later, you come down from your medicine journey or something happens in your life and suddenly you had a streak of good days and then comes a really bad day. Somebody says something to you, something happens, you know the drill. And this, for the first time, feels anti-fragile. So there's no sense of clinging to it, even though there is. But you see what I mean? There is a sense of clinging. There's that familiar fear that, gosh, this is too simple to be true. This is too good to be true. This is gonna go away, and we're gonna suffer. We're gonna forget ourselves in suffering, and we're gonna suffer just the same. And there's just a resounding yes. That's precisely what it is. There is nowhere to get to. There's no better place than this. It has always been this. You see, it has always been the same, and it will keep being the same. I might very well forget myself tomorrow, if not a minute from now, and find myself really stuck in ignorance and suffering. And can I love it? Can I allow that from this place? Even if this place is a distant memory of that loving acceptance, right? It doesn't matter if even amidst forgetting about all of that, not feeling love, feeling but resistance and suffering, can something flow with it? Can something cease to push at it to say, oh, I don't like that. It was better a minute ago. Can I just surrender? And so I'll put some words to how this surrender is playing out in Milo, just in case that's helpful. And I noticed that there's like a genuine humbleness of giving up the belief that this character, that Milo, that my manager parts that have been running the show, they take themselves to be the captain, right, of the ship, navigating the stormy seas and having so many battle scars to show for the voyage, but firmly believing that they're in charge and they got me through so many storms. And if they just persist and they do well, and if they have a little bit of luck with a lot of determination and hard work, then we will arrive somewhere, we will get somewhere really beautiful, we can have our dream life. And that creates for a constant, subtle tension, maybe even anxiety, like a background anxiety that you can't quite put your finger on it. That sort of need to perform, to be good, to be worthy, to earn our salvation. And this thing that I'm pointing to flips this whole thing on its head because there's nothing to earn, there's nowhere to get to. This already is. It's your birthright. You've never been not this. It's never not been here. You've only pretend, you've only led yourself to believe that it's not here. And so there is no path. There's a pathless path. You've never left home. It's always here. It's redemptive. It cancels all of your guilt and shame and all of your sins. You're not a sinner. Forget all of that. Suddenly there's only the now, here, now, here, now, here, now. And there's a total acceptance and immersion with it. There's an intimacy with everything that arises. But it does not exclude. It does not exclude the experience of fear. There's not a thought that like, well, hey, if we're talking about this awakened, enlightened, liberated state, then surely fear should not be arising here. You see, that is the resistance. That's the very thing we're pointing to. And instead, in absence of that resistance, when fear shows up and we just say, hey, that's cool, that is equally cool, it's equally beautiful as joy and excitement, there is simply no problem. And that's yet another way of approaching this. So let's try that on for size. It's an inquiry that I first heard Locke Kelly use in a meditation. Just close your eyes and notice your breathing and notice how it changes as you imagine. This is just allow it to be imagined. It doesn't have to be lived experience, but just imagine that there's no problem to be solved. Or what if? What if there was no problem to be solved? And I remember I've heard this years ago, and that was such a massive release in my system. And that was already, unbeknownst to me, I'm only piecing it together now, but that was already a sign. It was a subtle pointing to the fact how much of that tension I was holding in me constantly, of needing to get it right, of needing to fix some problem. And there were always more. It's like a whack-a-mole, There's always another problem. And what I'm noticing now is that it hits deeper. It's like, what if there was no problem to solve? Because truly there is no problem. And it doesn't get to be conceptual. It's not that we are trying to tell ourselves something that is clearly not true. Because when we're suffering, and I don't have to explain what the problem is. But here, once it's touched, right? Like, I don't mean to sound esoteric, like this is something that is reserved for the very few. I really, I can't speak to that yet. I'm not sure exactly what the journey there looks like. It's seemingly something opens up to the trust that it is the case. That is like the message that I'm transmitting right now. It's like either it will land and it will be received with curiosity and trust, or it will be dismissed. And I'm not sure what makes for that different experience and when it finally lands. But all I can say is that when it finally lands and something relaxes enough to let go of the tiller or the steering wheel, then there's a sense of recognizing that the small self never had a chance. Life is so big, and this, we can even think about it rationally if it helps, because it's not woo-woo, right? What I'm about to say. Life is complicated, you guys. It's infinitely complex. I don't even think we realize, right, just how complex life is. It's so easy to just, I mean, we can start anywhere. We can look at any sort of level, whether how our banking, financial systems work, to modern day medicine, to AI, to the fact that you're watching me speak across, internet on a digital device. Like, how many of us actually understand what's going on the level of chips, right? Of digital chips. Like, it's magic. And then we can look at ourselves. I mean, what is this bodysuit made out of? How did it get to be? What about the conception of a human being, the birth of a soul? It's beyond us, really. And yet we entertain the thought that actually, if we just try really hard, if we put our minds to it as a society, then we can hack it, we can break the code. And to some extent, that's clearly true. We make all of these advancements in science that lead us somewhere. And yet, I just want to notice the invitation in what I'm speaking about. Let's not, push that further. Let's not allow our parts to latch on to the metaphors and analogy, and because we will always be able to find a flaw, how it doesn't align, how actually what Milo said is not entirely true. This is art, okay? This isn't science. So just notice where I'm going with this and see if there's an invitation there to notice how complex life is, whether it is planetary life as human race or your own as Milo, as Kevin, as Richard, as Emma, as Paula, whatever, just your individual life. And notice how complex it is with relationships, work, career, passions, interests, hobbies, family. Do I have to go on? Like, we all know that. And there's a recognition that opens up like, gosh, like, how did I ever think that I could stay on top of all of that? How did I ever expect myself to be able to manage all of that, which is infinitely complex? And so that can create a sense of fear that, like, hold on, that sounds like overwhelm, right? That, like, we cannot manage, we cannot cope. But and that does sound, that can bring us to a very desperate place. But I want to say that even that is part of the journey for some. And it becomes grace when we see that being pushed against the wall, finally we look somewhere where we would have never looked before, because we were always conditioned to try harder. And when we run out of options, and this is why suffering is grace, why a lot of people wake up to this through immense suffering, where suddenly all of the options are taken off the table. Because only then, it's not only then, right? But you see what I mean? That it can actually be beneficial when you run out of options, because it brings you to your knees and you have no option but to surrender. And in that surrender, something begins to open, which we will talk about in the next episode. As always, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know what I can talk about next that would be helpful to you guys.